A poor Omega saved the wrong grandma. Then her alpha grandson asked him to marry him. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, it is free, and it is the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic and emotional stories like this one. Your support truly means the world to us. Before we begin, tell us in the comments where in the world you are watching from and what time it is where you are right now. We love seeing how far these stories travel and knowing who is joining us today. Now, let's begin today's story. If I miss that bus, I lose an hour of pay tomorrow, Jamie Carter whispered to himself, staring through the rain at the last convenient bus of the night. Then he looked back at the elderly woman standing beneath a broken shelter with a dead phone in her hand, and he let the bus leave without him. Jamie was 26, an Omega with 2 jobs, a tiny apartment, and a checking account that seemed to treat every unexpected expense as a personal attack. He had just finished an 8-hour shift at a neighborhood grocery store after spending the morning working at a small print shop. His shoes were soaked, his coat was too thin for the cold rain, and all he wanted was to get home. Still, something about the woman bothered him. She was dressed well, but she looked genuinely uncertain. "Ma'am, are you waiting for someone?" Jamie asked. The woman gave him a relieved smile. "My driver was supposed to meet me 20 minutes ago. My phone died, and apparently I have forgotten how civilization works without one." Jamie smiled. "There is a diner about a block from here. They will let you use a charger. And your bus?" Jamie watched its red lights disappear. "There will be another one." It was not technically a lie. The next route would require a transfer and add nearly an hour to his trip, but she did not need to know that. Her name, she told him, was Evelyn. Jamie held his umbrella over both of them as they walked to the diner. Inside, he found a charger behind the counter, ordered Evelyn hot tea, and called the number she gave him. "Your family is coming," Jamie said after hanging up. They sounded worried. Evelyn studied him across the table. "You paid for my tea. It was $3. And you missed your bus. You noticed." "I notice more than people think." She opened her purse and removed several bills. Jamie immediately shook his head. "No, you helped me. That does not make it a transaction. You could use this money." Jamie glanced at his worn coat and laughed softly. "Is it that obvious?" "Only because I have been alive long enough to recognize someone stretching every dollar." Jamie pushed the money gently back toward her. "Then you also know that needing money does not mean I have to charge people for kindness." Evelyn became quiet. "That is an unusual answer." "It should not be." Before she could respond, headlights swept across the diner windows. A black sedan stopped outside. A tall man stepped from the rear passenger door, wearing a dark overcoat over a perfectly tailored suit. Even through the rain, his presence changed the atmosphere around him. He carried himself with the composed authority of an alpha accustomed to being listened to without raising his voice. Jamie recognized him almost immediately. Dominic Sterling. His face appeared regularly in business magazines and local news reports, usually beside headlines about Sterling Group acquisitions, charitable foundations, or multi-million-dollar projects. Dominic entered the diner and went directly to Evelyn. "Grandmother." Jamie looked from him to the elderly woman. Evelyn smiled with almost suspicious innocence. "Dominic, this is Jamie. He rescued me from my technological incompetence." Dominic's sharp gaze moved to Jamie, then to the untouched money beside Evelyn's purse. "You found my grandmother?" "At the bus stop." Dominic's expression became unreadable. "And you stayed with her until we arrived?" "Someone needed to." Dominic glanced at Jamie's wet coat, then toward the street where the bus had disappeared. "What do you want in return?" Jamie stared at him. Evelyn closed her eyes as if she had already predicted exactly how badly this conversation was about to go. Jamie stood, picked up his umbrella, and met the powerful alpha's gaze without lowering his own. "Nothing," he said. "But if suspicion is the price of helping your grandmother, I think I already paid enough." Jamie held Dominic's gaze for one more second, then turned toward Evelyn. "Your grandson is here, so I am going home." Evelyn looked embarrassed on Dominic's behalf. "Jamie, please wait. You do not owe me an apology." Jamie glanced at Dominic. "And neither does he, unless he decides he wants to give one." Dominic's expression shifted slightly, but Jamie did not stay long enough to interpret it. He stepped back into the rain and began walking toward the nearest transfer stop. Inside the diner, Evelyn waited until the door closed before looking at her grandson. That was impressive. Dominic frowned. What was? How quickly you managed to insult the man who gave up his bus, bought my tea, found me a charger, called you, and refused my money. Dominic looked at the bills beside her purse. He refused all of it? Every dollar. Evelyn pointed toward the counter. He even paid for my tea himself. Dominic glanced through the window. Jamie was already half a block away beneath his small umbrella. Grandmother, people approach this family constantly. Jamie did not approach us. I approached him because I needed help. Dominic exhaled. I was being careful. Careful people ask questions. Suspicious people decide the answers before asking. The next morning, Dominic reviewed the diner's security footage after receiving permission from the owner. He watched Jamie enter with Evelyn, find a charger, order tea, and repeatedly push money back across the table. There was no performance because Jamie had no reason to believe anyone important was watching. Dominic also learned from the receipt that Jamie had paid $6.43 for Evelyn's tea and toast. For Dominic, it was an insignificant amount. For a man wearing a coat with a repaired sleeve and checking the bus schedule twice before leaving, it clearly was not. That afternoon, Jamie was arranging paper samples at the print shop when the bell above the door rang. He looked up and nearly dropped the stack in his hands. Dominic Sterling stood inside wearing a charcoal overcoat that probably cost more than Jamie's monthly rent. You have the wrong place, Jamie said. I do not. Dominic approached the counter but stopped several feet away. I owe you an apology. Jamie blinked. He had expected an assistant, a reimbursement check, or perhaps nothing at all. He had not expected Dominic himself. That was fast. My grandmother explained exactly how badly I handled last night. She seems intelligent. Painfully, Jamie tried not to smile. Dominic placed a small envelope on the counter. $6.43. Jamie stared at it. You investigated the toast? I verified what happened. That sounds less charming when you say it aloud. I am discovering that. Jamie opened the envelope and counted the money. There was exactly $6.43 inside. No hidden check. No business card promising favors. Why not give me more, he asked. Because you already said no. The answer caught Jamie off guard. Dominic continued. I was wrong to assume your kindness had an agenda. I am sorry. Jamie slipped the envelope into his pocket. Apology accepted. Dominic nodded, but he did not leave. There is something else. Jamie sighed. There usually is with rich people. To Dominic's surprise, he laughed. My grandmother told me what you said after she described the bus problem. I said several things. You said the city treats transportation for older residents as if getting from one place to another is the only problem, when reliability and communication are equally important. Jamie leaned against the counter. Because they are. Your grandmother had transportation. What she did not have was a reliable way to know why it failed or what to do next. Dominic's attention sharpened. Sterling Community Foundation funds 3 senior mobility programs. Then somebody should be measuring missed pickups, response times, and communication failures instead of counting rides. Dominic studied him. Jamie immediately recognized that look. It was not suspicion anymore. It was interest. What? Jamie asked. Nothing. That is clearly not nothing. Dominic reached for a business card, then stopped and left it in his pocket. Would you meet with me for coffee tomorrow? Jamie raised an eyebrow. Is this another reimbursement? No. Charity? No. Then what? Dominic paused. I want to hear what else you think we are doing wrong. Jamie looked at the alpha who had arrived the previous night expecting deception and had returned today willing to hear criticism. 1 coffee, Jamie said. Dominic nodded. 1 coffee. As Dominic walked toward the door, Jamie called after him. And I choose the place. Dominic turned. Why? Jamie smiled. Because I want to see whether a Sterling can survive coffee that costs less than $8. Dominic's quiet laugh followed him out the door, and Jamie realized the powerful alpha had returned intending to settle a debt, only to leave with something neither man had expected, a reason to meet again. The next afternoon, Dominic arrived at Jamie's chosen coffee shop exactly 2 minutes early. Jamie noticed because he had expected a man with Dominic's schedule to consider punctuality optional for anyone outside a boardroom. Instead, the alpha stood in line like everyone else and ordered plain coffee without complaining about the price. Disappointed? Dominic asked as he sat across from Jamie. A little. I was hoping you would ask whether they had imported mineral water. I can leave and come back more dramatically. Jamie smiled. Sit down, Sterling. Dominic did, then placed a folder on the table. Jamie looked at it suspiciously. You brought homework. You said we should measure missed pickups, response times, and communication failures. These are the reports from the 3 senior mobility programs our foundation supports. Jamie opened the folder and scanned the first page. Within minutes, his amusement disappeared. You count completed rides, but not canceled ones. Correct. And your satisfaction surveys are only sent electronically? Yes. Jamie looked up. To seniors using a transportation service partly because some of them have difficulty accessing technology? Dominic leaned back. That sounded less ridiculous before you said it aloud. Jamie continued reading. You do not have a transportation problem. You have an information problem. If a ride is 20 minutes late, the passenger needs to know whether to keep waiting, call someone, or make another plan. Your system measures movement, but not uncertainty. Dominic watched him closely. What would you change? Jamie pulled a napkin toward himself and began sketching a simple system. Automated phone updates, an emergency callback option, missed pickup tracking, and monthly reports based on reliability rather than total rides. Dominic asked questions, and Jamie answered until nearly an hour had passed. You have thought about this before, Dominic said. Not this exact program. I think about systems that make simple things unnecessarily difficult. Why? Jamie hesitated. Because when you do not have much money, every broken system costs more. A missed bus can mean losing wages. A late fee can mean skipping groceries. A confusing form can mean losing assistance you qualify for. Dominic's expression changed. There was no pity in it, only attention. Jamie appreciated that. I want you to consult on a pilot program, Dominic said. Jamie immediately closed the folder. No. Dominic blinked. You have not heard the offer. I know what this looks like. Poor Omega helps your grandmother. Wealthy alpha grandson invents a job for him. No, thank you. It is not charity. Then prove it. Dominic was silent. Jamie slid the folder back across the table. Write a real scope of work. Set measurable goals. Compare the pay with market rates. Have someone other than you evaluate whether I am qualified. If I cannot meet the standard, do not hire me. Dominic studied him for several seconds. Anything else? Yes. If your grandmother tells you to hire me because she likes me, ignore her. Dominic almost smiled. That may be the most dangerous requirement. You asked what I wanted. No. I asked what you would change. Jamie paused, and Dominic continued. You keep assuming I am offering this because you helped Evelyn. I am asking because you found a structural weakness in 10 minutes that our reports failed to identify in 3 years. Jamie looked at him differently. Dominic had not praised his kindness. He had praised his thinking. That distinction mattered more than Jamie expected. Send me the proper proposal, Jamie said. Then I will consider it. Dominic nodded. Fair. As they stood to leave, an older customer near the counter struggled to understand the shop's digital ordering screen. Jamie stepped over and quietly showed him where to find the printed menu. Dominic watched without interfering. Outside, Jamie opened his umbrella against a light drizzle. What? He asked when he noticed Dominic staring. Nothing. You were doing that thing again. What thing? Looking like you discovered evidence. Dominic smiled. Maybe I did. Jamie shook his head and started toward the bus stop. Dominic did not offer him a car, money, or rescue. He simply walked beside him for half a block, discussing the pilot program as though Jamie belonged in the conversation. For the first time, Jamie wondered whether the strangest consequence of helping Evelyn was not meeting a powerful alpha at all. It was meeting one who seemed increasingly interested in what Jamie thought. 2 days later, Dominic sent Jamie a 12-page proposal instead of another invitation to coffee. Jamie read it twice before admitting he was impressed. The contract listed a 12-week pilot, specific responsibilities, measurable outcomes, and compensation consistent with independent consulting rates. More importantly, Dominic had removed himself from the qualification review. 3 outside advisors would evaluate Jamie's experience and proposal before Sterling Community Foundation made any decision. Jamie stared at the document for several minutes, then called him. You actually listened. Dominic's voice carried quiet amusement. You sound surprised. Powerful men usually hear suggestions as optional. You did not make a suggestion. You gave me conditions. And that does not bother you? It would bother me more if you accepted terms you did not respect. Jamie submitted his application the following morning. A week later, after 2 interviews and a written assessment, he received the position. His first day at Sterling Community Foundation introduced him to a world of polished conference rooms, expensive suits, and people who seemed capable of turning a 5-minute decision into a 40-page presentation. Dominic did not hover. He introduced Jamie to the project director, explained that Jamie had independent authority over the pilot analysis, and returned to his own responsibilities. Jamie appreciated the distance until lunchtime, when he found Dominic waiting beside the elevators. "Coffee?" Dominic asked. "Is this a professional meeting?" "No." "Good. Your professional coffee comes with too many documents." They walked to a small cafe across the street. Halfway there, Jamie noticed a familiar woman approaching them. Evelyn Sterling wore a cream-colored coat and carried an umbrella even though the sky was perfectly clear. "Jamie," she said warmly, "I heard you accepted the project." Jamie looked at Dominic. "You told her?" "I enjoy surviving family dinners, so yes." Evelyn smiled. "I knew you would be useful here." Jamie stopped walking. "Useful?" Something in his tone made Dominic glance at him. Evelyn seemed not to notice. "You saw the transportation problem immediately. That is rare." Jamie studied her. "You told Dominic about my observation before he invited me for coffee." "Of course." "Why?" Evelyn's smile faded slightly. Jamie continued, "You barely knew me. I knew enough to recognize intelligence. Or you decided helping you made me deserving of an opportunity." Evelyn became quiet. Dominic started to speak, but Jamie lifted a hand. "Please, let me ask her." Dominic stopped immediately. Jamie turned back to Evelyn. "I am grateful you remembered what I said, but I cannot become someone's charity project because I happen to be kind at a bus stop." Evelyn considered him carefully. "Then do not." Jamie blinked. "Excuse me. You were evaluated independently, were you not?" "Yes." "And did Dominic influence that evaluation?" Jamie looked at him. Dominic shook his head. "No." Evelyn continued. "Then perhaps the opportunity opened because of circumstance, but you walked through the door because you were qualified." Jamie had no immediate answer. Evelyn smiled gently. "There is a difference between opening a door and carrying someone through it." Later that afternoon, Jamie presented his first analysis to the project team. He challenged 2 assumptions, rejected an expensive software recommendation, and proposed a simpler telephone-based update system that would work for seniors without smartphones. Nobody mentioned the bus stop. Nobody mentioned Evelyn. They questioned his numbers instead, exactly as he wanted. When the meeting ended, Dominic remained near the door. "You disagreed with almost everyone in there," he said. Jamie gathered his papers. 3 people agreed with me. Eventually, Jamie smiled. "Are you worried?" "No." Dominic looked toward the conference room where several executives were still discussing Jamie's proposal. "I think this building needed someone who does not confuse expensive with effective." Jamie felt warmth rise beneath his guarded amusement. "Careful, Sterling." That almost sounded like a compliment. It was. Dominic held the elevator door open but did not gesture for Jamie to enter. He simply waited. Jamie stepped inside by his own choice, and as Dominic followed, Jamie realized that the alpha's most surprising quality was becoming increasingly clear. Dominic had enough power to move almost anyone where he wanted. Yet with Jamie, he seemed determined to learn when not to use it. By the 4th week of the pilot, Jamie had learned that entering the Sterling world was easier than convincing everyone inside it that he belonged there. At a regional planning meeting, a senior executive handed Jamie a stack of folders and said, "Could you make sure Mr. Sterling gets these?" Jamie looked at the folders, then at the executive. "I can, but you may want to know that I am presenting the mobility analysis in 10 minutes. The man's face changed. "You are the consultant?" "That is what my contract says." Dominic, standing several feet away, had heard everything. Jamie saw him take 1 step forward, then stop. That small decision mattered. Dominic could have corrected the executive himself, but Jamie had already handled it. 10 minutes later, Jamie stood before the planning committee and displayed the first month of pilot. Results. Missed pickups had fallen by 28%. Average response time had improved by 11 minutes. And the telephone update system was being used almost twice as often as the smartphone application. "Technology is useful," Jamie explained, "but accessibility means designing around the people who actually use a service, not the people who approve its budget. One committee member frowned. The automated telephone system looks old-fashioned. Jamie nodded. So do elevators. We still use them because stairs do not work for everyone. A few people smiled. Dominic did not. He simply watched Jamie with unmistakable approval. After the meeting, the same executive approached Jamie. Your presentation was excellent. I apologize for my assumption earlier. Jamie accepted the apology and continued packing his laptop. Dominic waited until they were alone. I almost interrupted. I noticed. Was stopping the right decision? Jamie considered the question. Yes. Even though he was disrespectful? Especially then. If you correct every person who underestimates me, they learn to respect your authority. I need them to learn to respect mine. Dominic absorbed that without defensiveness. That distinction should have been obvious to me. It is obvious after someone explains it. Dominic smiled. You are unusually generous when telling me I was wrong. Do not get used to it. That evening, Evelyn invited them both to dinner at her home. Halfway through dessert, Jamie noticed an old photograph on a bookshelf showing a much younger Evelyn standing beside a fleet of community vans. What is that? He asked. Evelyn glanced toward the photograph. An old project. Dominic became strangely quiet. Jamie noticed immediately. What kind of project? Senior transportation? Evelyn replied. Jamie stared at her. You worked in senior mobility? A long time ago. You never mentioned that. Evelyn folded her napkin carefully. It did not seem relevant. Jamie looked from her to Dominic. The night we met, I spent 20 minutes explaining transportation failures to someone who had actually built transportation programs. Evelyn smiled faintly. You were very persuasive. Jamie did not smile back. Something about the answer bothered him. How much did you already know about the problems I described? Evelyn hesitated. That hesitation changed the room. Dominic leaned forward. Grandmother? Evelyn sighed. More than I told either of you. Jamie's attention sharpened. What does that mean? Evelyn looked at him with an expression that was suddenly less grandmotherly and far more formidable. It means, Jamie, that long before Dominic inherited responsibility for the foundation, I helped create the community program it grew from. Jamie slowly set down his glass. The helpless woman from the rainy bus stop had just become someone entirely different. So I did not rescue a random grandmother, he said. Evelyn held his gaze. No. Jamie glanced at Dominic, who looked equally surprised. Then he turned back to Evelyn. I think it is time you told us exactly who I rescued. Evelyn leaned back in her chair and looked from Jamie to Dominic. I founded the original Sterling Senior Assistance Program 32 years ago, she said. Transportation was only one part of it. We helped older residents reach medical appointments, grocery stores, community centers, and family members when ordinary transit failed them. Jamie glanced at the photograph again. Then why did you leave? Evelyn's expression hardened with old disappointment. Because somewhere along the way, the company became better at reporting how many people we served than asking whether we served them well. Dominic frowned. You told me you retired because you wanted a quieter life. That was the family version. And the real version? I became tired of arguing with people who believed a beautiful annual report mattered more than an inconvenient truth. Jamie almost smiled at the irony. That sounds familiar. Evelyn nodded. That is why I noticed you. Jamie's amusement disappeared. Did you arrange what happened at the bus stop? No. Evelyn answered immediately. My driver's delay was real. My phone actually died. Meeting you was an accident. But after we met, you tested me. Evelyn hesitated. I wanted to understand you. That is not the same thing. Dominic remained silent, letting Jamie control the conversation. Jamie continued. You offered me money even though you were studying whether I would take it. Evelyn lowered her eyes. Yes. Then you told Dominic about my ideas. Because they were good. And because I passed your test? Evelyn did not answer quickly enough. Jamie pushed his chair back slightly. That is the problem. Dominic finally spoke. Jamie, I did not know. Jamie looked at him and saw genuine surprise. I believe you. Then he turned back to Evelyn. I helped you because I thought you were a stranger who needed help. You decided that gave you permission to evaluate my character. Evelyn's voice softened. You are right. Jamie had expected justification. The immediate admission slowed his anger. I thought I was giving you an opportunity, Evelyn continued. But I turned your kindness into evidence in a private examination you never agreed to take. I am sorry. Jamie studied her. I do not regret helping you. I know. But I need you to understand something. Poor people spend enough of their lives being evaluated. We apply for apartments, jobs, assistance, credit, everything. Kindness should not become another application. Evelyn went completely still. Dominic looked at Jamie with quiet respect. You are right, she said again. And I needed to hear that. Jamie stood and walked toward the old photograph. He studied the younger Evelyn beside the vans. So this entire program existed because you once believed transportation could preserve dignity. Yes. Then maybe that is what we should rebuild. Dominic rose from the table. Not the old program. No. Jamie turned toward him. The principle behind it. Reliable service, clear communication, and people treated like participants instead of statistics. Dominic nodded. Then we build that. Jamie raised an eyebrow. We? You are the consultant. Dominic's expression softened. I am learning not to decide things for you. Evelyn laughed quietly. At least one Sterling learns quickly. Jamie finally smiled. Later, as Dominic walked him toward the front gate, the evening air was cool and clear. Are you angry with me? Dominic asked. No. Good. I am still evaluating you. Dominic stopped. Jamie let the silence last before smiling. That was a joke. Dominic exhaled. You are becoming dangerous. You met me at a bus stop. You were warned. They continued walking, and Jamie realized the strangest part of the truth was not that Evelyn had once been powerful. It was that helping the wrong grandmother had brought him into a family where wealth could open almost any door. Yet the most important changes were beginning because an Omega with almost nothing had refused to let anyone else decide what his dignity was worth. By the 10th week of the pilot, Jamie and Dominic had settled into a rhythm neither of them had planned. They worked separately during the day, met twice a week to review results, and occasionally ended those meetings with dinner when neither wanted the conversation to stop. Dominic never called those dinners dates, and Jamie never asked him to. The uncertainty felt strangely comfortable until a Monday morning board meeting changed everything. The pilot had exceeded its targets, but several Sterling executives wanted to move the program under a permanent corporate division. One board member looked directly at Jamie. Mr. Carter's contribution has been valuable, but a long-term program requires leadership with stronger institutional standing. Jamie understood the sentence immediately. His ideas were welcome. His authority was not. What qualification am I missing? He asked. The board member shifted. This is not about qualifications. Then what is it about? Silence answered him. Dominic sat at the opposite end of the table, his expression controlled. Jamie meets every professional requirement listed for the position, he said. If there is another standard, it should be stated clearly. Another director sighed. Dominic, everyone understands the complications. Mr. Carter is an Omega with no established connection to the Sterling organization beyond a temporary consulting agreement. Jamie felt the old familiar pressure of being evaluated by categories before competence. Dominic's voice remained calm. Then perhaps the problem is the organization, not the consultant. The meeting ended without a decision. That evening, Dominic asked Jamie to meet him in Evelyn's garden. He looked unusually tense. I found a solution, Dominic said. Jamie immediately became cautious. That sentence worries me. Dominic took a breath. If you became part of the Sterling family, the board could not dismiss your standing so easily. Jamie stared at him. What exactly are you saying? Dominic met his eyes. Marry me. For several seconds, Jamie could only hear the fountain behind them. Dominic, I know this is sudden, but legally and socially it would remove half the arguments they are using against you. Jamie's expression changed. You are proposing marriage as a governance strategy? Dominic seemed to hear himself clearly only after Jamie said it. That is not all it would be. Then tell me what else it is. Dominic fell silent. Jamie's disappointment hurt more than anger would have. I care about you, Dominic finally said. More than I intended to. And I care about you. Hope appeared in Dominic's face, but Jamie continued. That is exactly why I am saying no. Dominic went still. Jamie, I want a husband someday, Dominic. I do not want a marriage that functions like protective paperwork. Dominic looked away. I thought I was giving you security. You were trying to solve the board's prejudice by changing my relationship to you instead of changing the system that allows their prejudice to matter. The truth landed between them. Dominic did not argue. Jamie stepped closer, his voice softer. You have spent weeks learning not to speak for me. Do not make the biggest decision of my life because you found a problem you want to fix. Dominic nodded slowly. You are right. Jamie almost wished he would fight back. His immediate understanding made leaving harder. I need some distance. From the project? From you. Pain crossed Dominic's expression, but he did not reach for Jamie. How much? I do not know. Dominic took a slow breath. Then I will not decide that for you either. Jamie turned toward the garden gate, then stopped. For what it is worth, if you had asked me for the right reason, my answer might have frightened me. Dominic looked at him. Jamie did not explain. He walked away knowing he had just rejected the most powerful alpha he had ever met. Not because he felt nothing, but because he had finally learned that love offered for the wrong reason could become another beautiful cage. Behind him, Dominic remained alone in the garden, facing a harder question than whether Jamie would marry him. Whether he could protect the man he loved without making protection another form of control. For the next 3 weeks, Dominic did exactly what Jamie had asked him to do. He stayed away. There were no flowers at Jamie's apartment, no expensive gifts at the print shop, no private messages disguised as professional questions, and no attempt to make Evelyn persuade him to reconsider. Jamie continued working with the project team, while Dominic communicated through the same formal channels used for every consultant. At first, Jamie told himself the distance was a relief. Then he began noticing what Dominic was doing when there was no romantic reward attached. At the next board meeting, Dominic introduced a restructuring proposal for the community program. Jamie's authority would no longer depend on temporary sponsorship from a sterling executive. An independent oversight committee would evaluate leadership positions using published qualifications, measurable performance standards, and community impact. The same rules would apply to alphas, betas, and omegas. One director objected. You are redesigning governance because one consultant complained. Dominic remained composed. No. One consultant identified a weakness that should never have existed. And if Mr. Carter leaves, the weakness will still exist. Jamie heard about the exchange from the project director later that afternoon. Dominic had not mentioned their relationship. He had not used Jamie's rejection to create sympathy. He had simply corrected the structure that had made marriage seem like a solution in the first place. 2 days later, Evelyn visited Jamie at the project office. I owe you another apology, she said. Jamie looked up from his laptop. You are becoming very good at those. Age provides practice. She sat across from him. I spent years criticizing this family for confusing generosity with control, yet I did something similar when I turned your kindness into a test. Jamie closed his laptop. Why are you telling me this now? Because Dominic reminded me that an apology is incomplete if nothing changes afterward. Evelyn explained that she had asked the foundation to establish a policy preventing donors and family members from influencing consultant selection. Jamie smiled faintly. The Sterlings are becoming dangerously reasonable. Do not spread that rumor. A week later, the board approved the new governance structure. Jamie's position was extended based on the pilot's results, not his connection to Dominic. For the first time since entering the Sterling world, his authority existed on paper without anyone's family name protecting it. That evening, Jamie found Dominic alone in a conference room reviewing the final policy. They had not spoken privately since the garden. Dominic stood when Jamie entered. Is something wrong? No. Jamie looked at the document. I heard what you changed. Dominic nodded. It needed changing. You could have told me. You asked for distance. Jamie studied him. Did you think fixing the system would change my answer? Dominic's response came without hesitation. No. Then why do it? Dominic closed the folder. Because you were right. If your independence disappears the moment you refuse me, then it was never independence. Jamie felt something inside him shift. Dominic continued. I wanted marriage to protect you from an unfair system. I should have asked why the system had enough power to make protection necessary. Jamie stepped closer. And us. Dominic's expression softened, but he did not move toward him. There is no us unless you choose one. That answer mattered more than the proposal had. Jamie had spent years believing security came from finding someone powerful enough to shield him from uncertainty. Dominic was teaching him something different by finally understanding it himself. Real strength could build a door and still allow another person to decide whether to walk through it. Jamie looked at the alpha who had once asked him to marry for the wrong reason and realized that Dominic had changed without knowing whether Jamie would ever give him another chance. For the first time, Jamie did not wonder what Dominic could provide for him. He wondered what kind of life they might build if neither man needed the other to surrender anything in order to stay. 1 year after the rainy night that changed everything, Jamie stood inside the same neighborhood diner and watched rain trace silver lines down the windows. The senior mobility program had expanded across the county. Missed pickups had dropped dramatically, and thousands of older residents now received reliable telephone updates when their transportation plans changed. Jamie no longer worked 2 jobs. He had become the permanent director of community accessibility, appointed by an independent committee after competing against qualified candidates from across the country. His apartment was still modest, his old umbrella still leaned beside his front door, and he still checked prices before ordering dessert, but none of those things embarrassed him anymore. He had learned that having less money had never meant having less worth. "You are thinking too loudly," Dominic said from across the table. Jamie smiled. "I was remembering the first time we sat here." "You mean the night I accused you of having an agenda?" "I was trying to remember the romantic version." Dominic laughed quietly. Their relationship had grown slowly after the governance changes. There had been dinners, long walks, disagreements, apologies, and months of learning how to be together without turning love into obligation. Evelyn had approved enthusiastically while pretending her opinion was irrelevant. Tonight, however, she was nowhere nearby. There were no sterling executives, photographers, family members, or carefully arranged decorations. Just Jamie, Dominic, 2 cups of coffee, and the table where everything had started. Dominic reached into his coat and placed a small ring box on the table. Jamie stared at it. "Dominic, before you answer anything, I need to say this correctly." Jamie remained silent. Dominic opened the box, revealing a simple ring rather than the extravagant piece Jamie might once have expected from a sterling. "The first time I asked you to marry me, I was trying to solve a problem. I thought loving you meant protecting you from every system powerful enough to hurt your future. You taught me that love cannot become another system deciding your future for you." Jamie's eyes softened. Dominic continued, "Your career does not depend on me. Your position does not depend on my family. Your home, your reputation, your choices, and your future are yours. I have nothing to rescue you from tonight." "Then why are you asking?" Jamie whispered. Dominic smiled. "Because when something makes me laugh, you are the person I want to tell. When I am wrong, you are the person I trust to say so. When I imagine being 80 years old and complaining about technology in a bus shelter, you are standing beside me." Jamie laughed despite the emotion tightening his throat. Dominic took a breath. "Jamie Carter, will you marry me?" Jamie looked at the ring, then at the alpha who had once believed power meant finding solutions for everyone around him. "And if I say no?" Dominic did not hesitate. "Then tomorrow you will still have your career, your choices, your independence, and my respect. I will be disappointed, but you will owe me nothing." Jamie remembered a $3 cup of tea, $6.43 returned in an envelope, a contract rewritten because he demanded fairness, and a proposal he had refused because love had arrived carrying the wrong reason. Now there was no debt between them, no rescue, no bargain. Jamie reached across the table and took Dominic's hand. "Then yes." Dominic's expression changed from careful hope to stunned happiness. "Yes. Do not make me repeat myself, Sterling." Dominic laughed, and Jamie laughed with him. Outside, the rain continued falling over the city. Somewhere across town, one of their transportation vans carried an elderly passenger home, while an automated call assured her family that she was safely on her way. Jamie thought of Evelyn and the impossible chain of choices that had begun when he missed a bus for a stranger. He had believed he had saved the wrong grandmother that night. In truth, Evelyn had opened a door. Dominic had learned not to carry him through it. And Jamie had discovered that the strongest love was not the love that rescued him. It was the love that respected the man he already was, stood beside him without owning his choices, and asked rather than assumed. This time, when Jamie chose Dominic, he did not choose security, status, or a powerful family name. He chose the man. And Dominic, finally understanding what real strength required, chose him the same way.